Keanu Reeves enters a luxurious restaurant in the heart of the city, dressed in simple wrinkled clothes as if he had just come from an ordinary day. He chooses a discreet table, trying to go unnoticed while the glow of crystal chandeliers illuminates the space around him. But before he even gets the chance to place his order, a waitress approaches with a look of disdain and an arrogant posture. "Are you sure you can afford to be here?" she snaps, her tone laced with irony. Laugh enough for other patrons to hear. What happens next not only leaves everyone in the restaurant stunned, but reveals a truth that changes everything. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. we have another special story for you. The Lumiere restaurant was a symbol of sophistication in Beverly Hills, located on one of the city's most prestigious avenues. Its wide windows offered a view of streets illuminated by luxurious neon signs and slow-moving sports cars inside. Every detail was carefully curated to impress. Lumiere wasn't just a restaurant. It was a destination for those who wanted to be seen and admired. Ashley, one of Lumiere's most experienced waitresses, moved confidently through the dining room wearing a rehearsed smile. Her immaculate bun and tailored uniform reinforced her image of efficiency and control. Working there wasn't just a job. It was a privilege, at least that's how Ashley saw it. Being a waitress at one of Beverly Hills' most renowned restaurants was something she mentioned with pride whenever she had the chance. But Ashley had another side, an exaggerated pride that often spilled over into arrogance. She had a peculiar talent for quickly judging patrons, mentally categorizing them based on their clothing, demeanor, and appearance. Some people just don't belong here, she often thought. The restaurant's glass doors swung open smoothly and a man walked in. He wore worn-out jeans, a simple shirt, and a jacket that looked comfortable but lacked any hint of luxury branding. His presence was understated, almost invisible, as he calmly made his way to the reception desk. Keanu Reeves wasn't a man who enjoyed flaunting his wealth. Despite being one of Hollywood's most well-known stars, his reserved demeanor stood in stark contrast to the extravagant sparkle of Beverly Hills, and at that moment he seemed like just another ordinary customer. Ashley was busy at the reception desk discussing a VIP reservation with another staff member. When she noticed Keanu, she abruptly stopped talking, her gaze narrowing as she assessed him with barely concealed disdain. He didn't look anything like the typical Lumiere clientele. Without hiding her reaction, she tilted her head and gave him a slow one once over, her eyes lingering on his scuffed boots. "Good evening," she said in a dry tone, forcing a smile that disappeared almost instantly. "How can I help you?" "I'd like a table, please," Keanu said, his tone polite and calm. Ashley raised an eyebrow, as if she had just heard something absurd. Her expression seemed to ask, "How dare he?" She crossed her arms, her smile vanishing entirely. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This is a very exclusive restaurant." Keanu continued to smile, unfazed. "Yes, this is the place," he replied calmly. Ashley let out a short, incredulous laugh, shaking her head. "Okay. Just a moment, I need to check something." She turned quickly, not bothering to maintain any semblance of politeness, and headed to the reception office. There she accessed the reservation system, typing his name with exaggerated flair. When nothing came up, she rolled her eyes and returned to the dining area, visibly annoyed. "Well, as I suspected, you don't have a reservation," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "We do have a few tables available, but just so you know, this isn't a casual dining spot." Keanu remained unbothered, his calm demeanor seemingly irritating her even more. "I'd like to dine here," he replied, his tone unchanged. Ashley let out an exaggerated sigh, grabbing a menu with an abrupt motion. "All right, but I'll need to seat you in a suitable area. Follow me." She began walking briskly through the dining room without looking back to see if he was following. When they reached the farthest, least appealing corner of the restaurant, she dropped the menu on the table with an audible thud. "Here you go, this table is perfect for you," she said in a falsely sweet tone. "If you need Anything let me know, but only if it's necessary. Okay. Keanu maintained his slight smile, ignoring her tone. Thank you. I'm sure this will be an interesting experience. As she walked away, Ashley muttered under her breath, loud enough for a nearby couple to hear. He won't last 5 minutes here. Bet he'll leave as soon as he opens the menu across the dining room. Keanu calmly opened the menu, his eyes scanning the options without haste. The live music continued to fill the air, but something about his posture was intriguing, as if nothing could disturb his serenity. From the other side of the room, Ashley watched with a smug smile, certain that he would soon ask for the check and disappear. Ashley leads Keanu through the dining room with quick mechanical steps, not even bothering to look at him. Instead of choosing a table in the center where the golden light from the chandeliers highlights the elegance of the environment, she takes him to the most hidden and poorly lit corner of the restaurant. It's a table near the kitchen, where the sound of dishes being washed and the muffled chatter of staff create an atmosphere far removed from the rest of the dining room. Here you go, this table should do, she says, dropping the menu on the table carelessly. I think you'll feel comfortable here, it's more private. Keanu glances at the table and then at Ashley, his slight smile unwavering. Thank you, he replies calmly. She crosses her arms and narrows her eyes, as if trying to figure out whether he's being sarcastic or simply clueless. You're welcome, she replies, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Just so you know, we usually reserve these tables for special cases, but since we don't have anything booked tonight, you can have it. Spinning on her heels, she leaves before he can respond. When Ashley returns to the table to take his order, her behavior becomes even more cruel. She pulls out her notepad with an exaggerated motion and casts a cold glance at Keanu. Have you decided what you'd like, she asks, not bothering to hide the boredom in her voice. Or would you like a recommendation? Keanu looks at the menu and calmly points to one of the most expensive main courses. I'd like to try this one. Ashley stifles a laugh, covering her mouth with one hand as if trying to hold back a snide comment. Oh, of course. The filet de brocini she says with a condescending tone. A classic dish. Just to confirm, sir, you do know this costs $350, right? Keanu nods, his calm demeanor unchanging. Yes, it sounds wonderful. She tilts her head, her lips curling into a malicious smile. All right then, just to make sure there aren't any misunderstandings later, I suggest you double-check the prices. We wouldn't want anyone to have unpleasant surprises. Keanu remains unfazed, which seems to irritate her even more. I'm certain, he says calmly. Ashley lets out a dramatic sigh, as if she's doing him a huge favor, and jots down the order. Very well, as you wish, but I'll warn you, our chef prefers dishes like this to be enjoyed by those who truly appreciate fine dining. I hope it meets your expectations. She spins on her heels again, but before leaving she stops and turns back. Oh, and one more thing, the minimum tip expected here is 20%. Keep that in mind while you enjoy. As he waits, Keanu seems entirely unaffected by the discomfort Ashley tries to create. He glances around the dining room, admiring the decor and the pianist performance. When the appetizer arrives, Ashley sets the plate down forcefully, causing it to slide slightly across the table. Here's your appetizer. I hope you enjoy it, or at least know what you're eating, she says with a mocking smile. Keanu thanks her politely. Thank you. Ashley leans in slightly, as if trying to provoke a reaction. You know, a lot of customers who order this dish end up not liking it. It's not exactly mainstream, but I think you'll do just fine. Good luck. Keanu looks at her with the same calm expression as always. It looks excellent. Thank you for your attention. Frustrated that she can't elicit any negative reaction from him, Ashley walks away, quickly muttering something to a coworker. That guy won't even make it to the main course. He's going to ask for the check as soon as he sees the bill. Meanwhile, Keanu continues to eat his appetizer leisurely across the dining room. Ashley watches from a distance, her arms crossed. A malicious smile spreads across her face as she notices that he seems Distracted, I bet he's going to ask for tap water. These types always do, she comments to another staff member who visibly ignores her. Uncomfortable, however, the elderly customer at a nearby table continues to observe. He raises his wine glass and silently toasts in Keanu's direction, who responds with a slight nod and a smile. Dinner is only just beginning, but Ashley's growing disdain won't go unnoticed for much longer. After taking Keanu's order, Ashley decided to teach a lesson to the customer she believed had no right to be there. Instead of promptly taking the order to the kitchen, she made a point of prioritizing the patrons she deemed more important. She stopped to chat with an elegant couple in the center of the dining room, laughed exaggeratedly at a joke told by another guest, and even delivered a cocktail to a table that wasn't hers. Meanwhile, time passed and Keanu continued to wait patiently in an attempt to provoke him further. Ashley repeatedly walked past his table, pretending to be busy. Every time he glanced in her direction, she averted her eyes and quickened her steps, as if she were too occupied to attend to him. After a long wait, Keanu was approached by one of the patrons who had been observing Ashley's behavior. The elderly man with neatly combed white hair and dressed in a navy blue suit approached with a kind smile. "Good evening, young man. I hope you don't mind me interrupting, but I've noticed that you've been overlooked," he said, his tone polite yet firm. Keanu smiled back calmly. "Good evening, don't worry, it's all fine." The elderly man chuckled softly and leaned in to speak more quietly. "You know, sometimes being treated like this is a test of our patience, but I can say with certainty that maintaining your composure is a great sign of strength." Before Keanu could reply, Ashley suddenly appeared, interrupting the conversation. "Sir, can I help you with something?" she asked the elderly man, her voice more polished than usual but with a subtly authoritative tone. "I wouldn't want you to disturb our customer." The elderly man narrowed his eyes at her but maintained his composure. "Don't worry, miss, I was just greeting this gentleman here. It's rare to find someone so serene." Ashley let out an exaggerated sigh and gestured toward the man's table. "Well, perhaps you should return to your table and enjoy your dinner," she said. Clearly impatient, Keanu simply observed the interaction, his expression calm yet analytical. "Thank you for coming over," he said to the elderly man with a slight nod. "It was a pleasure speaking with you." The man nodded and returned to his table, but not before casting one last look of disapproval at Ashley, who appeared entirely indifferent. When Ashley finally decided to bring Keanu's main course, she made sure to take longer than necessary. First, she stopped in the kitchen to chat with the chefs, leaving the dish sitting under the warming lamp. Then she returned to the dining room to attend another table, completely ignoring the ready plate. When she finally brought the dish out, she placed it on Keanu's table with a brusque gesture. "Here's your order, I hope you enjoy it," she said, her tone dripping with irony. "Oh, and if you don't like it, please let us know, we can always adjust to something more affordable." Keanu thanked her with the same calm demeanor as before. "It looks excellent, thank you." Ashley gave a cynical smile and leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough for him to hear clearly. "Are you sure it's a very sophisticated dish? It might be difficult for someone who's not used to it." "I'm sure," Kay replied serenely. "Thank you for your concern." Frustrated that she couldn't elicit any negative reaction from him, Ashley walked away quickly. At the bar, Ashley commented to a coworker who was unsuccessfully trying to ignore her remarks. "He's pretending to be polite, but it's obvious he's uncomfortable," she said with a laugh, placing an empty glass on the counter. "I bet he doesn't even know what he's eating. It's always the same with these types. They come here to feel important but end up making fools of themselves." Her coworker forced a smile, visibly uncomfortable. "Maybe he just wants to have dinner, Ashley. Maybe we should treat him like any other customer." She stared at him, incredulous. "Like any other customer? Did you see the boots he's wearing? He doesn't belong here, and frankly, if he can't handle it, he shouldn't even have walked through the door." Meanwhile, the couple who had been observing the scene earlier whispered to each other, "She's awful." The Woman said, shaking her head. He's being so polite, but she keeps trying to humiliate him. I agree, the man frowned. It's disgraceful. I think we should say something to the manager back at his table. Keanu calmly finished his main course. He glanced around, ching the sympathetic looks of other patrons, but he didn't appear the least bit bothered. When Ashley returned to clear the plate, her expression was still filled with disdain. So how was the dish? Did it meet your expectations? She asked with a fake smile. Keanu looked her straight in the eyes and replied, it was excellent. Thank you. Please tell the chefs they did an impeccable job. She raised her eyebrows, surprised that she couldn't provoke any complaints or irritation. As she walked away, she muttered to herself, but loudly enough to be heard, he might be smiling now, but let's see if he still is when the bill comes. Seated at the table, Keanu calmly observed a slight smile on his face. His gaze suggested that the moment to act was drawing ever closer. Ashley, increasingly frustrated by her inability to provoke Keanu, decided to escalate her provocations. After serving him the coffee he had requested, she deliberately spoke loudly enough for several nearby tables to hear. You know, it's hard to maintain standards when just anyone thinks they can walk in, she said to a colleague, casting a pointed glance in Keanu's direction. The colleague, visibly uncomfortable, tried to change the subject, but Ashley continued, that's why we have a reservations policy. It helps us avoid situations like this. Several patrons nearby began paying attention, some frowning, others whispering among themselves. The couple who had been following the situation looked outraged. The woman placed her hand on her chest, murmuring, this is outrageous. She's trying to humiliate the man in public. The elderly man at another table took a sip of his wine, observing the scene with a look of disapproval. He muttered under his breath, this has gone too far. Keanu, still seated calmly at his table, surveyed the room without a hint of irritation. His serene demeanor seemed to unsettle Ashley even more, as she now felt the eyes of other patrons on her. A well-dressed woman seated 2 tables ahead commented to her companion, he must be someone important to stay this calm. Anyone else would have left by now, or maybe he's just stronger than she realizes. The man replied, casting a curious glance at Keanu, determined to provoke a reaction. Ashley returned to Keanu's table to ask if he needed anything else, but her approach was anything but professional. I hope you're enjoying your experience, she said with an exaggeratedly sarcastic smile. After all, it's always interesting to have different kinds of people here. It adds a unique touch to the atmosphere. Keanu, fixing her with a steady gaze, finally responded, his voice calm but carrying weight. Different? Could you explain what you mean by that? Ashley let out a short, nervous laugh, trying to maintain her composure. Oh, don't take it the wrong way. It's just that, well, our clientele typically has a more traditional profile. It's rare to see someone with your style. Here the room fell silent. Nearby diners stopped their conversations, clearly tuning into what was happening. Ashley seemed pleased with the attention she was receiving, believing she had the situation under control. Keanu stayed silent for a few moments, holding her gaze. His expression was firm but devoid of anger. Finally he spoke, you're right. Perhaps I should handle this differently. Ashley blinked, confused, but before she could respond, the restaurant manager appeared. The manager, a middle-aged man with an impeccable posture and an air of authority, scanned the room and immediately sensed the tense atmosphere. When his eyes landed on Keanu, his expression changed drastically. He hurried over to the table, completely ignoring Ashley. Mr. Reeves, the manager exclaimed, his tone filled with respect, I wasn't aware you were visiting us today. Please let me know how I can assist you. Ashley's face turned pale, the blood draining as she watched the scene unfold. She glanced at the manager, then at Keanu. Utterly bewildered, Keanu held the manager's gaze for a moment before turning his attention back to Ashley. Now, he said, his tone calm but commanding, let's talk about how we treat people. The silence in the room was deafening. All eyes were fixed on Keanu's table, waiting to see what would happen next. The manager of Loomer, a man with an impeccable appearance and a commanding demeanor was visibly shaken as he took in the situation, ignoring Ashley entirely. He addressed Keanu directly, leaning slightly in a gesture of respect. "Mr. Reeves, I deeply apologize for the delay in recognizing you. It's an honor to have you with us this evening. Please let me know how I can make your experience more enjoyable," he said, his tone filled with difference. Ashley, who until that moment believed she was in control of the situation, froze. Her mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. Mr. Reeves, he knows him. What's going on here? Keanu looked at the manager, offering a slight smile. "Thank you, but there's no need to worry. I'm fine. I'd just like to have a brief conversation with your staff if that's not a problem." The manager's expression immediately grew concerned, sensing that something was amiss. "Of course, Mr. Reeves, whatever you need." He cast a sharp, reproachful glance at Ashley, who stood beside them, pale and visibly uncomfortable. Ashley began stammering, desperately trying to regain some semblance of control. I didn't know. I thought." The manager cut her off with firm resolve. "Thought what, Ashley? That this customer, who happens to be one of the owners of this restaurant, didn't deserve the same respect as anyone else?" His voice was low but carried a severity that drained the remaining color from her face. Ashley struggled to justify herself. He didn't say who he was, and he looked. She trailed off, realizing that anything she said would only worsen her situation. Keanu finally broke the silence, his voice calm but carrying a weight that resonated across the room. "There's no need to state who I am to be treated with dignity. Frankly, it shouldn't matter. Everyone who walks through these doors, regardless of their appearance, should be welcomed with respect." The entire dining room was riveted. Many patrons murmured among themselves, stunned by the revelation that Keanu was one of the restaurant's owners. The couple, who had been following the interaction, appeared pleased, and the elderly man nodded discreetly in approval. Nearby tables buzzed with hushed conversation. A man seated with his wife whispered, "I knew there was something different about him. He has a presence that's impossible to ignore." The woman nodded, "And look at how he's handling it, such grace. I hope she learned something from this." Other diners whispered among themselves, some clearly ashamed for not intervening earlier. The atmosphere in the dining room was tense, but there was a palpable sense of anticipation. Everyone wanted to see how this would end. The manager turned to Ashley again, his expression a mix of frustration and restraint. "Ashley, I expect a detailed explanation of your behavior after your shift. For now, please leave this table and stay away from it. I'll take over from here." Ashley opened her mouth to protest, but the manager's resolute gaze silenced her. With an abrupt motion, she turned and hurried away, avoiding the stares of the patrons. Keanu took a deep breath and stood up. He glanced around the room, noticing that all eyes were fixed on him. With a calm tone imbued with authority, he began to speak. "This restaurant was founded with the idea of being a place where everyone could feel welcome, no matter how they dress or where they come from. Unfortunately, that was not the case today, but I believe we can learn from this." The diners remained silent, absorbing his words. The manager appeared both uneasy and admiring of the way Keanu was handling the situation. Keanu turned to the manager and concluded, "I'd like to meet with the entire team after the dining room closes. There are some important things we need to discuss." The manager nodded immediately. "It will be done, Mr. Reeves. Once again, I apologize for everything." Keanu returned to his seat, and the dining room slowly began to return to normal, though the patrons continued to whisper about what they had just witnessed. The empty Lumiere dining room was silent. The staff stood gathered as Keanu Reeves remained at the center, his presence commanding the space. He looked around, his eyes meeting each person's, conveying a profound calm but also unwavering resolve. "We all make mistakes," he began, his voice steady and resonant, "but what true matters is what we do after those mistakes. Today we witnessed a problem that goes far beyond poor service. We saw the impact of snap judgments, hidden biases, and a lack of empathy. But I want you to understand, this is not a condemnation, it's an opportunity." Keanu paused, letting his Words settle, his gaze lingered on Ashley, who sat at the back, her eyes filled with tears and shame. Ashley, he said, his tone gentle but firm, I know what happened. Today was a mistake, and mistakes can be corrected as long as there's effort and a willingness to learn. What you choose to do next will define who you are. Keanu turned to the rest of the team, his voice softening but retaining its purpose. In the world we live in, it's all too easy to judge people based on what we see on the surface, their clothes, their appearance, what they drive, or where they live. But I want you to consider something: what happens when you choose to treat someone with kindness, when you decide to look beyond appearances and recognize another person's humanity. He stepped forward, placing his hands in his pockets, his tone becoming more reflective. He stepped forward, placing his hands in his pockets, his tone becoming more reflective. We all carry struggles that no one else can see. The person who seems out of place might be having the worst day of their life. The one who doesn't dress as expected might have achieved more than you could imagine. The kindness we choose to extend, especially to those who seem undeserving, might just be the gesture that changes everything. The staff remained silent, absorbing his words. Some appeared visibly moved, while others stared at the floor, clearly reflecting on their own actions. Ashley finally lifted her head, wiping away her tears. Her voice was quiet but laden with remorse. I never thought about it that way before, she admitted. I was so focused on the restaurant's image, on maintaining standards, that I forgot what really matters. I forgot that every person has value, no matter who they are or what they look like. I promise, Mr. Reeves, I'll change. Keanu nodded, offering her a small, encouraging smile. That promises to yourself, Ashley, not to me. True change comes from within, and if you need help along the way, I'll be here. She nodded vigorously, a mix of relief and determination washing over her. Kindness isn't about grand gestures, it's about the small choices we make every day. It's about treating everyone we encounter as if they matter, because they do, and that is what defines the character of a place and of a person. Oh, Mr. Reeves, your message was clear. We'll work to ensure that Loomer reflects exactly what you envision. Thank you for reminding us of that. Keanu simply nodded, offering a serene smile as he stepped out of the restaurant. The streets of Beverly Hills sparkled under the city lights. He paused briefly on the sidewalk, gazing at Lumiere's entrance. His soft smile returned as he reflected what had transpired that evening. Wasn't just about a restaurant or a mistreated customer, it was about the importance of creating spaces where people feel seen, heard, and valued. And Keanu knew that even in the most challenging situations, there was an opportunity to inspire and transform. As he walked down the illuminated streets, Keanu thought about what he had said, but also about the message he hoped others would take from that night. If he could leave everyone who heard the story with one thought, it would be this: in a world where you can be anything, choose to be kind. True strength lies not in judgment, but in acceptance. And above all, remember, it's in the small choices we make every day that we shape not only the world around us, but also who we are as human beings. If you enjoyed this story, we have many more that will warm your heart. Click the screen to explore more stories of hope, compassion, and resilience. Oh, you